Alright, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode in this series of ancient history of Bharat. I hope the volume the volume is loud enough. Alright, let's keep this aside. Not needed anymore. Alright, so in the previous episode I guess we have reached the age of the Upanishads. Alright, so a quick recap. The primitive form of the Aryan faith, when there was a transition from hunter-gatherers to settler communities. Okay, there was a particular type of faith that was practiced at that time. Okay, and it was practiced and perfected over centuries, if not millennia. Okay, so before being written down, there were centuries of trial and error, and then again after those centuries of trial and error, there were actually, if not centuries, there would have been decades when the perfected through trial and error of those centuries, the perfected form of faith was practiced, and that is something that was noted down in the Rig Veda and all the Samhitas. And then from that point forwards, you will see that after the age of the Vedas, the Rig, Sam, Yajur, and Atharva, after all those Vedas, there was the age of the Brahmanas and the Samhitas. Okay, when I say Brahmanas, not the people who are currently called people belonging to the priestly class, they are currently called, not that Brahmanas, the literary texts. Okay, so after that, after the Brahmanas and the Samhitas, there were Upanishads, and it is said and it is widely believed that Upanishads are the culmination of the Aryan faith, the culmination of the Aryanhood. Okay, culmination and perfection of the Aryanhood. Alright, so if you read the Upanishads, they are equivalent to reading the Vedas. Okay, because they have summarized and even concluded all the philosophical thoughts that were propounded and started in the Rig Samhita. Alright, so but yes, then again there are many Upanishads. 108 is the exact number that is available to us. Okay, we don't know how many of them were actually burned down in the many libraries that were burnt across the subcontinent, but let's not get into that. But yes, okay, the only available ones are 108. So we'll again cover, I guess we have already covered sutras in the previous video. We'll again, for the people who are watching this video for the very first time, okay, now in the Upanishadic age, okay, people had to be explained different sciences. Okay, now to understand the Upanishads, you need to read the sutras. Okay, sutras are basically look at it this way. So if you had to, let's take English language for example, if you had to learn how to frame correct sentences, okay, so you need to understand the grammar, then you need to understand, like inside the grammar, you need to understand nouns, proper nouns, pronouns, conjunctions, prepositions, and all that subject matter. Okay, so all the things that were necessary to comprehend and make sense of the Upanishads were developed as appendages to it, meaning you need to read that first, hence you'll be able to make sense of the Upanishads. Okay, so those were the sutras. Okay, the class of literature which comes under this head, that is the sutras, does not form part of the Vedic literature, but is in close association with it. It is not the Veda, a divine revelation, but the Vedanga, the limbs of the Veda, constituting works of human authorship. Okay, so they are not considered to be divine revelations, so to speak. Okay, so all the sutras such as the Vyakarana, okay, all these were developed by trial and error method of humans. They were not exactly divine revelations. For the next time people say that, when you say that there was an author who goes by the name of Panini and he single-handedly wrote the entire treatise on Sanskrit, okay, then there will be people outside who will say that no, but it was all divine revelation, you cannot believe, he was not an expert. Okay, so but these all were human endeavors. It were like I said, these all were human endeavors. It was not divinely revealed to Panini to write the, what Ashtadhyayi and what are other texts that he wrote. So yes, all these things were human endeavors, like I said. Though the Vedangas include a number of exegetical sciences like Shiksha, Vyakrana, Nirukta, Chanda, Jyotisha, and all of them have to come down to us in the Sutra style. Okay, so all these things were developed through human authorship. There were human authors who developed all these sciences. Okay, so the first Nirukta, was it Nirukta? No. The first sutra was Siksha, meaning the traditional list enumerating the 6 Vedangas. I guess we have covered this in the previous videos. Next was the Kalpa Sutras, which deal with the rituals directly connected with the Brahmanas and the Aranyakas. Brahmanas, again, in a literary sense. Okay, the 2 branches. So there were 2, largely there were 2 discriminations, or there were 2 distinctions. Okay, that is the correct word. There were 2 distinctions, the Griya Sutras and the Dharma Sutras. Griya Sutra, as the word suggests, it was more for the commoners' practice, people with not very extravagant resources. If they had to undertake the practice of traditions and sacrifice, they could do it on their own, referring to the hymns that were given in the Griya Sutras. Okay, whereas others who wanted to conduct an extravagant, display of wealth by, undertaking that sacrifice on a very large level, then those people, they would follow the rules that were written in the Dharma Sutras. Okay. The Griya Sutras also describe the 5 great sacrifices. There is a daily sacrifice to the gods, demons, fathers, man, and the Brahman. Okay, the Griya Sutras, the commoner's way to practice the Aryan faith. Okay, they mention 5 sacrifices that you're supposed to do every single day. And now I'm not really able to wrap my head around this fact that how exactly have we come to give up all these 5 sacrifices. Okay, I see people day in and day out discussing about how other faiths, other belief systems, and more specifically the monotheistic traditions mention certain things that you're supposed to do regularly, and that the Aryan faith does not have so. No, we do. It's just that we choose to ignore. Okay, there are 5 sacrifices that are mentioned in the Griya Sutras that you're supposed to do every single day. Okay, and those are sacrifices to the gods, to the demons, to the fathers, to the man, and to the Brahman. The first 3 of these comprise the simple offerings of food and a libation of water. The first 3 sacrifices to God, demons, and fathers, they're simply just offerings of food and libation of water. Okay, whereas the sacrifices to man is nothing but hospitality shown to a guest. Okay, so there is also something, hospitality shown to a guest is one sacrifice, and sacrifices to the Brahman constitutes the daily study of the Veda. Okay, so if you belong to the Aryan faith, if you are a descendant of your Aryan forefathers, you are supposed to study the Veda every single day. That is one of the sacrifices that you need to make. Okay, but how exactly have we given this up? We don't know. because we were made to believe that everything that is there in the Vedas is simply just superstitions, and we have simply accepted it. Okay, but now, at least now that we have majority of our population that is of a young age, and they are the thinkers. Okay, they are the ones who have the capacity to think. They are mature enough to think to a level, so they would know that studying of the Vedas is not a fruitless exercise. You'll definitely gain something out of it. It is something that was exhorted upon you by your Aryan forefathers, that you are supposed to read it every single day. Okay. The third class of textbooks, which are perhaps a continuation of the Griya Sutras or the Dharma Sutras, dealing with the customary law and practice. The difference between the Dharma and the Griya Sutras is that the weight of dharmas is laid on the wider relation of man to the state, so that those sections which deal with family become condensed and subordinate. I'm going to read this statement again. and then I'm going to reveal, not exactly reveal, but then I'm going to lay out in the open, okay, for you to decide. I'm going to read that statement again. The difference that is between the Dharma and the Griya Sutras is that weight in the Dharmas is laid on the wider relation of man to the state. Which state exactly are they talking about? Currently, the state as we understand is the government. Okay, so your Dharma means your relation with the government, relation of a man to the state, so that those sections which deal with the family become condensed and subordinate. Okay, so for a man in the Bharat subcontinent, okay, your first and the foremost relationship is with the state. Okay, not exactly the government that we have currently, not that one. Okay, that again we will discuss in the future videos, what exactly the type of government that is being talked about here. Okay, but not the current form of government as we have, not not that. So everything else takes a secondary stage, secondary place. It must be noted, okay, again there is a dark spot in our past and I'm not going to conveniently neglect it. Okay, it must be noted that rules of punishment are largely based upon caste considerations. Caste again being a Portuguese word, we'll replace it with Varna system. Okay, Varna consideration, so that for having committed the same offense, a Brahmana may pass unscathed, but a Sudra may even receive a capital punishment. Okay, again this was something that was practiced 5,000 years ago, so we cannot simply just extend that same logic to the contemporary world, that since it was done 5,000 years ago it is still prevalent. No, that's not prevalent. In fact, the reality is quite the opposite of what I just read. Okay, next up is the Sulva Sutras, directly attached to the Srota Sutras. The word Sulva means a measuring string, and these texts give minute rules regarding the measurement and construction of the fire altars and the place of sacrifice. They may thus be regarded as the oldest books on Aryan geometry. Alright, so yes, these books, Sulva Sutras, they are texts, okay, texts that mention measurements and construction of fire altars. Alright, so yes, we also have separate texts for this, and these are the oldest texts for geometry. Next is the Vyakarana, Ashtadhyayi of Panini, of course, Panini the great scholar. The Vedic grammar in this work receives only a sectional treatment at the hands of Panini, his principal object being the description of the bhasha, the ordinary language of the people, and not the sacred language of the seers. Okay, whatever Panini manages to accomplish in the text of Ashtadhyayi is for the language of the commoners. Okay, not exactly the language that was exclusively limited to the priestly class. Okay, but yes, it is also written that the formation of nouns from roots and the others dealing with accent are representatives of earlier treatises in the field of grammar before Panini. So even before Panini there were people who had written texts on grammar, but for some reasons or historical events that we cannot talk about, because that will apparently trigger some emotions into certain community, because they're not able to handle the truth. That's the straightforward argument. Now since they have converted, they want the best of both the worlds. They want the pride that comes with being from the Aryan descent, but they also want this pseudo glory that comes to having being converted to a certain faith that had managed to stay in power for, let's say, 6 centuries. Okay, so you cannot have it both ways. Next up is Nirukta. It was deemed necessary to have lists of rare and obscure words. Okay, Nirukta, he wrote a book. Okay, so it's not exactly a book, but it's a list of words, difficult words. These lists were styled as Niganthus, and Yaska's treatise is a commentary on such lists, prepared not by himself but by his predecessors. Yaska certainly had forerunners in this field who commented on such lists, but none of their works have come down onto us. Again, we cannot discuss these things, otherwise, some emotions might be triggered. Why exactly have these works not come down to us? I'm really shocked how we reached this point. So, because barely even talking about this will make me communal. Oh, why exactly are you talking about this? You are trying to spread hate. Next is Jyotisha. Jyotisha was also one of the sciences. Okay. Some of the astronomical theories and mathematical calculations worked out by the Vedic Aryans are really startling, considering the age and surrounding in which they originated. But at present, the only source is the Vedic Samhitas and the Brahmanas, particularly of the Yajurveda, from which we may derive our knowledge of these. Okay, the science of astronomy and even astrology, both. I mean, astrology is more about horoscope and all that. Astronomy is the actual science of studying, planetary objects. But yes, all these things were definitely touched upon and was not exactly in the Vedas, but they were the appendages or the Vedangas, limbs. You need to understand this to understand the Vedas. All right, that is about the end of this chapter. Okay, and that brings me to the end of this video as well. In the next video, we are going to focus on chapter number 25, that is the political and legal institutions in the age of the Upanishads. Okay, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching.